Hello and welcome. Today we're going to be talking about a subject near and dear to our hearts at Backyard Bounty, which is how do we work with nature instead of against it in our gardens to help improve our streams and our waterways and our ecosystem. So stormwater runoff causes real issues for the environment, especially here in the Mid-Atlantic. The video we're shown here you can find on the Montgomery County Department of Environmental Protection website, and it goes into some pretty good depth about why stormwater is so important, what it actually does to our landscape, the kinds of things that happen in addition to pollution. What does it do to the actual physical landscape and to the wildlife? And we strongly encourage folks to go find this. You can also find this video on our website at backyardbounty.net. Unfortunately, stormwater issues are also getting worse, and this is something that we've been hearing about anecdotally for quite some time, but there is now science to back up the fact that the storms that we get here in the DC area are getting stronger and are getting more frequent. So this is a problem of dealing with stormwater runoff and stormwater management that's not going anywhere, and unfortunately it's getting worse, and we're going to have to figure out how to deal with it. On top of that, we live in a very urban area, and it won't surprise anybody to hear that urban areas have more trouble dealing with stormwater than more rural areas. This graphic from the Potomac Conservancy does a good job of showing the fact that if you're in a very rural area, up to 50% of the water associated with a typical 1-inch storm will infiltrate back into the groundwater, where that 50% number drops to 15% when you're in a truly urban area. One of my favorite numbers from the study done here is that a 1-inch rainstorm, which is our typical summer thunderstorm in this area, will create 18 million gallons of runoff in just Arlington County. So we're talking about a lot of water, a lot of sediment, a lot of pollutants, all going straight into our waterways and into the Chesapeake Bay. So this is a big issue. It's not going away. What can we as gardeners do about it? And we follow a 4-point system to talk about how gardeners can manage stormwater. It starts with assess, goes to assistance, act, and advocate. And we're going to go through each of these in some depth, and then we're going to take a look at a project that Backyard Bounty did recently where we put these in action. First step, assess. And the question here is really understanding how much stormwater runoff your yard creates, and the equation is fairly simple. All you want to do is figure out what is the overall impermeable surface that you are dealing with on your property. And the simplest way to do this, unless you happen to know the square footage of your roof, is take the square footage of your house and divide it by the number of floors, okay? And add to that the square footage of the impervious patio and driveway surface, so that equals your total impervious surface. Multiply that times 0.6 gallons per square foot, and that gets the amount of runoff you're looking at in, again, that typical 1-inch storm. And a 3,000 square foot house is going to generate more than 2,000 gallons of runoff in a 1-inch storm. Second, assistance. One of the places where we're lucky, we talked about our challenges. One of the places where we're lucky is there are a lot of great programs in this area for dealing with stormwater management. Some of the public ones include Montgomery County Rainscapes, which is one of the original programs that Backyard Bounty has been involved with for years. But we also work with Arlington County Stormwater Wise, District of Columbia River Smart. There are a couple others coming online now. And the Potomac Conservancy is a fabulous group if you're concerned with this topic. They've been working for many years on helping us treat our waterways with more respect. A lot of these resources are free, and in the case of the top 3, the government entities will actually help homeowners finance the installation of stormwater management and native garden facilities on their own properties. Step 3 is act, and this is the big one, right? What are the steps that we can do to actually create a garden in our own yard that works with nature instead of against it? So first thing you need to do, you need to understand the site. This is a project that we did fairly recently, and part of what we do initially on a project is we do a very detailed site analysis, and in this you can see the red outlines are the impervious surfaces, and the blue lines are the contours, and you really need to understand the topographical nature of the site in order to see where's water going to go, because you want to help water go where it wants to go but you also want to know where you can slow it down and where you can make it pause. Knowing this, you make a plan, and obviously you're not going to be able to see a lot from this plan on a presentation, but what we're trying to do here is we're trying to build a garden that manages stormwater. We're not trying to build a stormwater management facility, right? And that's the key point. When these are done, they look like beautiful gardens. They don't look like pipes and gullies and swales, okay? The first step that we go through here is turf removal. You can see this same project again where we were taking out a lot of kind of typical suburban turf. And unfortunately, it would be great if it were otherwise, but unfortunately turf is really not very helpful for stormwater removal because most of the turf that we have in this area has very shallow root structures, and that means that the water is not able to seep down along the roots into the ground. So you get stormwater on a typical turf lawn, and a lot of it's going to run off. So we do remove a lot of the turf. The white lines you can see here painted are for a path that's going to be going into that. There are a couple of techniques that you're going to want to think about associated with stormwater management. The most well-known, I would suppose, is a rain garden. And what a rain garden is designed to do is to catch water and keep it for about 24 hours so that it has time to seep back in, to percolate back down into the ground. Okay, this is not like a rain barrel where the water is going to be there forever, but it allows the water to stop long enough so that it can actually take its time and seep back into the ground instead of running into your storm drain. Okay. This graphic describes exactly what's entailed here, but really what you're looking at is a depression where water is going to collect and where you're going to be able to have native plantings and some berms so that you've got this water in here and it'll slowly seep back down into the ground. There are a lot of different kinds of rain gardens. Rain gardens are not applicable everywhere, but they are one of the go-to tools that you're going to use in a stormwater management approach. The most important thing with rain gardens is decompacting the soil. It used to be a while ago that rain gardens were done in what was called a soil exchange technique, where you're taking dirt out and replacing it with a sandy mixture, and we don't do that anymore. What we do is a decompaction method where we're actually creating softer, fluffier soil. Not going to surprise anyone that hard-packed ground is not going to be able to absorb stormwater, but if you create this decompacted pond, you're going to be able to catch a lot of this water and let it soak back into the ground before it goes down the drain. The other thing that you're going to want to make sure you do is, we talk about 1-inch rainstorms. Our rain gardens are designed for 1.5-inch rainstorms. We do get bigger ones, and so you want to make sure that if that rain garden is going to overflow in a particularly large storm, you've got a place for the water to go in the direction that you want it to go. So you will create, you can see this stone overflow in the bottom right here, you will create an overflow associated with that, so it's going in the direction you want it to. The other major technique is called conservation landscapes, and what this is, where a rain garden keeps the water and lets it soak down, a conservation landscape is really more about the plants and more about slowing the water down. We talked a little bit earlier about the fact that plants with deeper roots are better at absorbing water. And you can see here on this graph, and this was particularly striking to us when we first saw it. It's one of those things you know intuitively, but when you see it visually, it really gets you. Way over on the left, that little tiny green line, that is the root structure of typical turf grass. And a host of these other native plants, you can see how much deeper their roots grow. So that's going to help with the water percolation, it's going to help with erosion, it's also going to help with the drought tolerance of plants. There are a lot of reasons that you want to use deep-rooted native plants when you're building a garden to manage stormwater. The other key part associated with conservation landscapes is grading and microberms. And when you think about it, these are really speed bumps. You can see Dennis here in the foreground building some microberms associated with it. And when we did that topographical map of the property, we understood where water was going to come down, and we're trying to both channel the water but then also slow it down. These microberms are kind of like speed bumps. Once the yard is planted, you actually don't see them anymore because they're covered up by the plants. but they slow the water down enough so that you don't end up with a real torrent going into your stormwater drains. Now, of course, everybody's favorite part, the planting part, right? And we generally shoot for a mix of about 75% native plants. Most of these, since they're native, are pretty good at dealing with the climate that we have here, where we both can get a lot of water sometimes and not much other times, and heat and cold. So these are great plants that you can use. A lot of resources out there on the different kinds of plants that should be used in a native garden. Once you've got this garden installed, obviously maintenance is key to making this successful, both from a stormwater management perspective and also just from a garden perspective. Most gardens that you install are going to take about 3 years to fully mature. So in those 3 years, there are a couple things that you're going to need to do. Number one is you are going to have to water your garden for the first few years. Even with native plants, it takes a few years for those roots to go all the way down in that picture that we just saw before. So you're going to want to use some irrigation. Now, we generally do not install, hardcore piped irrigation systems. We find that something like a soaker hose or just sprinkler watering is good enough to get you that 1.5 inches of water that you need per week. Another important thing to remember, you really don't want to be watering every day. You want to water periodically. You want to get the inch and a half, but you want to do it infrequently enough that the roots feel like they have to reach down to look for water. That helps with that root growth as well. So yes, you'll be watering. You see here that we've got some soaker hoses. Those seem to work really well because they last 3 to 4 years anyway before they get broken up or buried into the ground. The second one is mulch. You can see this is, again, the same garden, newly planted, looks really pretty, but the plants haven't filled in yet. It's going to take a while. So mulch is key to both keeping moisture in the ground, but also keeping the weeds down associated with that new garden, and it also just looks nice. Like we said, plan to weed. You can see a picture here. This is taken probably about 6 weeks after the garden went in, and you can see some weeds popping up in here in between the stones and around things. There will be weeding the first few years that you have this garden. We generally shy away from using any kind of chemicals. Matter of fact, we always shy away from using any kind of chemicals. To be honest, we do hand weeding. It's really the best. It's the way to get at the roots. It's the way to not harm the other plants that are going on in the garden. And then you get to the benefits. This, again, is the same garden that we've been looking at all along, and this is only about 5-6 months into it. So you can see how quickly these plants filled in. Now, these homeowners did a particularly nice job taking care of this garden, but this really turned into a very striking garden very, very quickly. So you're getting both stormwater management, because this garden that we're looking at was built as a stormwater management facility, but you're also getting a truly beautiful place that you can be out in nature. The paths that we were looking at before, you can see how these paths, they are stones, they're stepping stones, but then they're also interlaced with ground covers. Again, that helps to mitigate some of the water coming down in storms, but it also, looks nice in the process. And this last picture was taken during, that one snow that we got in the winter of 2016, 2017. And we generally like to put in plants that are also going to have some kind of winter interest, right? You don't want to just be looking at a bare ground during the winter time. So we don't cut things back very hard during that process. So lots of aesthetic benefits in addition to the stormwater benefits. And we can't forget the benefits for the pollinators, the beneficial insects, the wildlife. Since you're using native plants, since you're providing a water source, you're going to attract a whole host of friendly butterflies and bees. The fourth step is advocate, and really we all want to be taking part in efforts that are going to help make our world a better place, especially right now. And that's going to include things like advocating, so please support groups like the Potomac Conservancy and the work they're doing. 90% of our drinking water comes from the Potomac. Almost more importantly, spread the word to your friends and neighbors. We see a lot of traffic on our neighborhood email listserv about things that people can do. And let them know that a stormwater management garden is not really just to set up pipes and trenches. It's really a garden that happens to be functional. And encourage other jurisdictions that haven't quite gotten on board yet, if you happen to be a constituent, to adopt water-friendly policies and water-friendly programs like some of the other ones. we've always taken as our kind of guiding influence Alice Waters, and one of the things that she really focused on was the ability of small networks of people to create great change. There's that great Margaret Mead quote that we've got here on the screen. And through the efforts of Alice and a lot of other community-based people, her focus was getting good, clean, organic food. And the number of farmers markets has gone up fourfold in 20 years since she really got involved in this. So again, never doubt that a small group of people can really change the world. So to end, we really want to understand how do we work with nature rather than against it. Both of these pictures are stormwater management facilities. The question is, which one do you want to live next to? So for a couple of minutes, we're going to take you through a recent stormwater management project that Backyard Bounty did. This is in Chevy Chase, Maryland. And these were experienced gardeners that wanted to control stormwater and also redo their garden in the process. They had put in a fairly good-sized deck on their property and wanted to make sure that they were using the space effectively. We have shown you a couple diagrams of rain gardens. This is an actual rain garden that was installed. You can see this, the bottom picture was taken right after a rain, and you can see the rain ponding there. Lots of times we get questions about mosquitoes. Since the water in a rain garden doesn't last for more than 24 hours, you're underneath the mosquito incubation period. So as long as this is functioning correctly, and if they're designed correctly, they function correctly. As long as it functions correctly, you're not going to have any issues with that. The plants that go into the rain garden itself are particularly hardy plants that are both drought and flood tolerant, but also beautiful. We mentioned before that you want to aim for 95% native plantings. We don't shoot for 100% because we all have plants that we love that we want to incorporate, and you actually get the maximum wildlife benefit if you stick to that 75% and above threshold. The other thing that this homeowner wanted to do is they wanted to incorporate some edibles. And with a name like Backyard Bounty, that's obviously something that we've always been involved in. So what they did is along some of the sunnier stretches of the garden, you can see basil and tomatoes and herbs, and they incorporated these straight in the garden as opposed to having a separate vegetable garden. We've spoken a lot about impervious surfaces, and one of the best ways to control the impervious surface that you've got is use the space you have efficiently. That deck that got installed, underneath it is where we installed the storage space for the kayaks and the shed for gardening. And so all of this space was being used wisely and therefore didn't increase the amount of impervious space on the property. And above all, create a space to be in the garden, to connect to other people and to connect to the nature around you. So that's a brief tour of one of the gardens. This is Meadow Lane and Chevy Chase. We were very honored to have this be the winner of the 2016 Montgomery County Carol Carter Award, which is the highest award that Montgomery County gives out for landscaping. And it was given out specifically for the stormwater management portion of this garden. So thank you so much for your time. If you want to talk about stormwater management, please contact us. There are a lot of resources and we would love to help.